All right, so this is Enterprise Reporting and Notifications with PowerShell. And I'm Bradley Wyatt. So a little bit about me. I'm a technical specialist at PSM Partners, and we're just a managed services consulting firm, also with recruiting, and we're headquartered here in Chicago, Illinois. And I'm also the author at thelazyadministrator.com, and there I just kind of like to share different blogs, scripts, and kind of software that I write. And then just if you want to go ahead and connect with me, I encourage everyone to reach out and connect with me. I love working with different IT pros in the community. I wouldn't be here without Mike reaching out to me. I'm on GitHub. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter. You can email me, and then again, there's my blog right down there at the bottom. So the agenda today, I'm going to take you through HTML-based reporting with the Report HTML module, and that is available on the PowerShell gallery. And then a new one that actually Evotech shared yesterday called Dashimo. It's kind of based off of the Report HTML module. I'll kind of show you the differences, but overall, they're very, very similar. Dashimo kind of takes it a next step further. And then lastly, I'll talk about Teams notifications with JSON webhooks, how you could kind of post information to your team or other people using webhooks in Teams. And so the first one is the Report HTML module. And it's a powerful module for creating HTML-based reports. You don't need to know any kind of HTML coding at all. It kind of does all the heavy lifting for you. And you can install it on your machine just by running install-module and -name report HTML. It's available on the gallery. It's fully interactive, so you could kind of see me in this GIF here. I'm kind of going, you could sort the tables, you can interact with the data, you can search, and then down there I kind of have some pie graphs, and I'm able to interact, kind of go over and see the values for each item. It gives you a great data at a glance. You only need one single file. The output's just one single HTML file, so it's great to give maybe prospective clients, someone in management, and it's really easy that they're able to just take it, understand it, interact with the data, and it gives you a good overview of your environment. And we'll go through it, but you could kind of customize it exactly how you want to. You could show the different attributes. You could specify your tables. And like I said, no HTML coding. And so for this demo, the first one I'm going to do, I'll bring it over here. All I'm going to do is, and this is a code, I'll actually show it to you first. Let me bring this over here. So our first item we're going to do is a real basic report, and this is what it looks like right here. So we're using the basic template, and all I'm going to do is grab all my AD users and spit them out in a table. So here's what the file is going to look like, and then this is the code behind it. So first I'm going to make a new, you can make a array here. So I have my users table, and I'm going to start piping. So I say get AD user, filter, and I'm going to kind of grab everything. I'm not going to filter, I'm going to take all the properties. And right here I'm going to just start my for each object loop. So I'm going to start piping all the users here, and then I'm making a PS custom object. So my object's going to have several different properties, which we can see listed here. My name, user principal name, if the object is enabled, and last logon. And so what I'm doing here in my for each object loop is I'm saying, get AD user, and for each one, I'm going to take my property, and here's its name, and so on and so forth. User principal name enabled, and all I'm doing is querying. Yeah, give me a second. Okay, so like I said, so we're taking the properties here and we're giving them values. And then down here, once I'm done, so this is my custom object block. Once I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and add it to my list or your array. I like to kind of put a catch-all at the bottom, just because I work with a lot of different environments. I don't see why you'd ever have no users in your table. but this kind of gives you a good idea, and it gives you a good if you're having any issues here. So I'm just going to say if my users table dot count. So if there's nothing in my users table, I'm just going to go ahead and have my PS custom object. It's just going to have a little information there, and it says no users were found. And then this is where we start building the HTML report with report HTML. So I'm going to create my new object here, kind of the same as above. And I like to format it kind of like this, because report HTML, you're going to be opening and closing different objects, different kind of tables, different content. So here I'm creating my report, and I'm saying I'm going to open my first page and give it a title, AD users report. So as we see here, AD users report. And now I'm going to take my first, so I use the get-html content open, and I'm going to have a header, header text of users. So this is going to be where I stick my first table of objects. So if I try to bring this over here again, I have, here's my users, and this whole thing is actually my table. It's the entire array that we had gotten before, and that's where we do it in line 28. So now that I have this content open, I can inject information into it. I could put my array here, my table. So I put my final report, and I'm adding it and doing get-html content table. So instead of the content, and inside this content, I'm going to put a table, and I'm just going to put my users table. It's either going to contain, my information saying that there's no users, or it's going to contain all my users. And then down here, we see I have a pairing with line 27 and 28. So now I'm doing get-html content close. So now I opened it in line 27. I injected my table, and then I went ahead and closed it back out, and I'm done. I don't need anything else. I'm going to go ahead and close the page. Finally, what I'm going to do is take all of that. See, as we're doing the .add, I'm going to go ahead and save this report. I named it, and I put the report path. So I'm going to actually copy this really quick, because you'll get a better idea in the next now this module was actually just updated in January, but one of the kind of drawbacks is this performance of speed is not instant like you might hope. So if I go ahead and play this, if I run this, you're going to see, if I put verbose logging, you're going to see that it's actually sitting here and building. It's on the last one, save-html report. But I'll show you kind of the performance. So even if you have a lot of users, and there's not a limit, but it does matter if you have a lot of users. I mean, if you could put a lot of data into this, and so here we go. So here's my report. So it kind of took about 10-15 seconds just for this to run. And the other reports I'm going to show you, they're going to take about the same time. I already went ahead and ran through them, so I'll just kind of take you through the code. But the longest portion is line 31, where it's actually trying to save it. So my next one I'll show you here.
So will it bulk if you forget to put the close?
The close page?
Both of them, either one. So so what we're doing is creating a list of individual, an ordered list. Is that not even an ordered list? Creating an ordered list of those individual return objects.
Mm-hmm.
And then
we're creating a list of our objects. I used to just make a generic array, but yeah, you're creating a list. I posted on Reddit, and everyone told me to do this, system collection generic.list, because performance-wise, it's a lot quicker than if you just did an array. Mm-hmm. And if your question is like, if I forgot to close this out here, if I didn't do that, I believe it'll error out on you. But there has been times where I haven't closed certain objects. Like if I had another content table and I forgot to close it, I believe it'll finish, but your HTML report, it's going to be all weirdly formatted because you never closed it. And that's kind of the setback on this module, is you really need to you really need to pay attention on where you are within your objects here. And that's kind of like why I like to format it like this, and kind of like a little, almost like a tree. So I remember to close them, and I have this, the line, and I remember that I'm still in my object, and so on and so forth.
All right, cool, thanks.
So my second one, and this, if we see here too, it's not formatted. I mean, it's not ordered at all. You see, it's kind of all over the place, and we can sort it, and I believe I sort it in this one. Yeah. So, and I'll show you that right here. So my next one is we'll see a difference here. Your logo here, and then we'll have this kind of generic picture over here. So you can actually you can actually create and supply your own template CSS file and specify it, and I'll show you where that's at as well. So the one I have here, I'm going to put my fake company, and I'm going to kind of change the coloring on the CSS template file to match that. So here's my new one, and that's all that's different here. So I have, and I'm sharing this afterwards too. I'll share it on GitHub. But my CSS template file, and it's stored in the module path. So your modules folder report HTML, and then it's on version 1.4.1.2. And then I just changed 2 items for the color, the background color, to this blue color, and that's gonna change it all here. So instead of using this greenish blue, I'm changing it to match my company, and already we see a big difference. And then the final part is I'm using my left logo string parameter, and I saved a photo called complogo.ping. And so now you can put one on the left and you can put one on the right, but now we see my new company pictures over here on the left. So now we're kind of starting from this generic report, and we're kind of customizing it to kind of meet our company needs. And then as we progress here, now I'm going to return 2 different, and if I track back here, we can see that I'm doing in my get-ad user, I'm just going to go ahead and sort the object, just because I wanted this table to be sorted alphabetically. But since it's an HTML report, we can go ahead and sort it kind of however we'd like. So now in my third example, I'm going to also get a computers table as well, or list. So if we see over here, I have my users, which we've already gone, and then here's my variable here for the generic.list. And then I'm just going to go ahead, and as you see, it's very, very similar. Really, it's only line 5 through 15. So I'm going to just do, get AD user, and down here, get AD computer. I'm not going to filter, and I'm going to grab all the properties. I'm going to sort it. And then for each one, as you see, I'm just going to keep creating a PS custom object and adding it to my generic list. Down here, I have my catch-all. And then as you see where I talked about the formatting, I'm opening my content here, injecting this table, closing it, opening my second one, which should sit below it, injecting my computer table, and then this would be the end result. Is now I have my users on top, and then my computers on the bottom. And then if we keep going, this will be my next one. So I'm changing the table type and I'll actually show this. So now, if I have a lot of objects right now, I don't have a lot, but this would show every single one. I only want to filter that, so this will show the first 15 entries. Now we can search. We can see how many entries we have here at the bottom, and then I can have different pages depending on how many objects that are returned. So if you have 100 users, this would be much more beneficial because you don't want to list that. I mean, you don't want an HTML report that's giant. So there's the result. And then all that's different between this example and this example is we're going down here, and I specify HTML content data table. So if I look at my previous one, it's just a content table. Down here, the data table is going to give you much more, it's going to give you better options for reporting. Let me open that back up. So as we see, I can change, I can show 15, 25 objects, 50, 100 in all. And then my fifth example here, I'm going to go ahead and start building with charts. And the charts allow you to kind of go over and see the values. So I can see enabled, disabled. So I have 4 and 5 and so on and so forth. So if I go, I believe we're on our fifth one. So what I'm going to do is just make a integer variable. So I'm just going to, and there's different ways you can do this. You just need to kind of have you need to have the data available to you. But what I like to do is it's already going to go through this for each loop here. I'm just creating 4 different integer variables. I give them a value of 0, and then kind of as it pipes through everything, I'm saying, hey, if you're enabled, let's go ahead and increment you by 1. If you're not, let's increment this variable by 1. And same with computers. Oh, it's down here. So same with computers. If it's enabled, we're going to go ahead and increment this variable, this integer variable, by 1. We see it's system.in32, so it's, and then this one we're going to increment as well. And then right over here, this is the data that we're going to actually use. So it's still going to be a system, it's going to be a generic.list. So I'll split this up too. So I'm going to have my enabled, disabled users table. So first I take my enabled, list. I'm going to add it to this table. I'm going to do that with disabled. So then my this variable here, this generic.list or array, is actually going to show enabled with the value, disabled with the value, and same with computers. Computers is going to do the same thing here. So I have my generic.list. I have enabled, disabled, and then it's just going to combine them too. And then you don't have to specify all this, but you do need to call get HTML pie chart object. So if I jump down really quick, we need to have, this needs to be supplied. If we have the parameter is required, the chart object parameter. So I like to specify my, what the chart object's like. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a title, and I like to have a height and width of 250. It's going to be a donut. You could do donut charts, and you can do like a line chart. And then the color scheme, there's several different templates that are in the same module path. I'm just going to select random, and same with here. So if we see here I am down here. So I'm going to now create a new content open called charts, which I see over here. And then I'm going to mess with columns as well. Can you use height/width as percentages? Can you use? I don't believe so. I would have to look at the help documentation, but I don't believe they allow percentages. So I'm going to go ahead and mess with columns. As you see, I have 2 different objects within one within one table here. So I'm going to do my content open, and I'm going to say, okay, on my first column, I want to go ahead and put my enabled, disabled users table. And then there's my chart object. And then I close this column 1 of 2, and I'm now going to open 2 of 2. I'm going to go ahead and inject my enabled, disabled computers. And that's what we have here. I'm guessing I missed this, but we said we were using, I missed it. Yeah, report HTML modules from the PS gallery, and it was just updated, so speed-wise, it's a lot better in this version than the last one. I think I have a write-up on it where I showed it in fall, and a lot of people said that it was very slow. Now it's improved greatly. It's still kind of a little slow. And then my last one is tabs. Let me close this. So now if I don't want one giant HTML table. I kind of want to break it up a little bit. You can have different tabs. So I have my dashboard. I just call it dashboard, and groups. So you can kind of have different different reports within your report. So I'm going to have this here, and then in my groups, I'm going to go ahead and have, one return all my groups. It's a data chart table, and then I'm going to have my charts down here. So I believe I have this open as well. So all that's different between this one and this one is I have the group type table, and then security groups and distribution groups, because this one I want to say, which my difference is. So I have 50 security groups and 8 distribution groups. So there's just integer variables again. So if I go down here, computers, and here's my group. So I'm kind of doing the same thing that I did with users, computers. Here I am, and I'm saying, if it's distribution, let's increase this by 1. If it's not, it's got to be security group. And then here we go. I'm just doing my name, type, and scope. I'm taking these attributes. I'm storing it in my list. This is saying, what if that table is null? Go ahead and put this information. And then this is doing the same. It's making our variable have, or the generic list or array have security groups, distribution groups for names, and then the value is going to be their count here, and we're going to have the integer there, And all that's different here, so now I'm going to, and as you see, this is kind of where the module gets very confusing if you have a lot of different tables and a lot of different items in here, but I'll kind of walk you through it here. So now before I open my page, the first thing I want to do is have my tab header right here. I have my tab array, which I'm just going to have dashboard and groups. So I'm going to select the first one. This is my tab heading. So if I look up here, there's my tab heading. You could put anything in it. It's required. And then I'm going to just put these items in it. And if I jump all the way down, here I'm closing what's in this tab. So my last thing I put is going to be the enabled, disabled, computers. So that's everything that's going to be in my first tab. And if we go over here and look, that's the last thing I see. So now I'm going to go ahead and do a tab content open, select my second one. So the first one I selected, the 0. This one is the first one. And I'm going to go ahead and put the groups table here, and then my charts, and close it out. And then if I go over here, I have my groups. Here's my table. There's my chart, and it's closed out. So it's got a lot of flexibility with it. You just have to really pay attention. And if any of you looked at my write-up on the full AD report, there's a lot of lines just doing this, opening the objects, closing them, having different pie charts, and so on and so forth. But it's got a lot of flexibility. You can do reports on anything. I think I have an Office 365 one. You could do Azure, so on and so forth. And so and then my next example here is a new module by Evotech called Dashimo. And I reach out to him. We talk all the time, and he told me, he got this idea, and he was using the report HTML, and he just wanted to improve upon it. So he really ran with it. So this is kind of what it looks like.
Hey, Brad?
Yeah.
Before you jump into that, I just want to ask you, because I just want to give some perspective, because we always have new people that come into the meetings, and I probably should have led in with this, that some people may be overwhelmed when they see stuff like what you're doing and be like, whoa, that's something I could never do. I mean, when you started playing with this, how long did it take you to kind of get this stuff? I would assume you did lots of iterations figuring out how the layout is and how it works for you. It probably wasn't something that you figured out in a day, correct?
No. The documentation was kind of lacking, so it was really hard to, and he had a website, the author has a website, and the documentation just was kind of lacking, so it was hard to kind of grasp with it. So I just kind of played, I started with one table, and then I tried to figure out how to do another table, But yeah, it took me a little bit. But once you kind of understand the opening and closing of the objects, it kind of you kind of run with that, and it a lot easier.
Yeah, so the reason I was pointing that out is really just to drive that point home to people that may be looking at this and going, whoa, there's a lot there. So if we break it down for a second, in the beginning, right, there's not a lot of code here that's going out and grabbing data from Active Directory. Most of it is formatting. So
Right.
if it's something that you're interested in using, but you think that it's just a little over your head, you know, I had said this earlier, definitely go to Bradley's website and look at his examples, because very honestly, what you can do is you can just copy the entire code, get it running in your environment, and all you really need to do is change your AD user and AD computer statements, and then you're kind of in business. And then you can practice changing the look and the feel and the layout of it without diving deep into all the formatting code. So I say that because you see this stuff and sometimes you feel overwhelmed. And it's not hard if you take it in steps. So take a piece that you know works, break it down into small pieces, and then before you know it, you'll start to understand Bradley's code or the report HTML code better, and you'll feel more comfortable with it. But don't feel that you have to start from line 1 and write 250 lines like Brad did. He's already done the work. Go use what he's built already to your advantage so that you can get your feet wet.
Right. Also, all these examples, and I list them, so I have example 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All these examples, I missed that one. All these examples are going to be on my GitHub, so you could download them, and like this one is ready to go as long as you have the report HTML module. All you have to do is run this, and you could run this in your environment. Really, all you'd have to do is kind of change the report path. But yeah, they'll all be available on my GitHub. You can kind of walk yourself through them. You can reach out to me if you have any questions. But yeah, they start off simple, but the more information you get, kind of the formatting gets a little convoluted. But then for this one is based off report HTML, and I'll show you the differences. Let me close out of all this. So it's fully interactive, again, data at a glance, single file, no coding. The great thing about this is speed. Another great thing is you don't have 20, 30 lines just kind of just on the formatting, how you want your report to be. You also have different export options, as you see here. And then the two things that are coming soon, as you see, are these really nice reports, and it's going to be more granular. You could change it more than report HTML, and conditional formatting. So you could say, if this value is above 1, I want you to be red. If it's below, be green. So that's another great thing. And then I'll dive into this one. This one is a little is quicker and easier. And then let me open this really quick. And then let me go to my first example. So the first example is we're going to be building basically the same report. And if I come over here, get my result, and you'll see the differences here. Here you kind of have a newer, modern interface. You see that it's really, really similar. We can copy the table, we can export it to CSV. So this one gives us a lot of different options. We can even export the whole thing to PDF, and I'll let you view that right here. But this one takes the formatting. You don't need to do all the different formatting, and I'll show you that. So here I'm doing, my get AD user. It's the same as the report HTML module, and this -emo module is available on the PS Gallery. I think it was published yesterday, so I've been playing around with it. I think I played around with it for an hour or so. So it was really easy to kind of get used to. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm creating a generic list. I'm going to pipe all my users here, sort my object, and here I'm kind of going through for each object. Here's my custom object again. And then here's my name, user principal name. And then here you go. Here's all the attributes, the actual attributes here, and I'm going to add it. So now this is where it's really great. So I'm going to create a dashboard, so I'm just going to use the word dashboard. And my coloring isn't right in this IDE because I haven't loaded the module locally. And this kind of follows more of a PowerShell syntax. So I have my dashboard. I'm going to do dash name, Active Directory, and then I'm going to save it here. And then here I'm opening it, and I'm going to have my first section, name, users, and I'm going to make that invisible, and you'll see why in a sec. And then I'm going to have inside this section, because this is a bigger section, I'm going to have another section called name. And I might be able to even get rid of that. I haven't played with it enough. I'm going to put a table in here. I'm going to hide my footer and then my data table right here. So that's all it is. You kind of save yourself from doing all the formatting here. And if we go to my second one, my second example, which is going to give us this, we're going to have two tables now, kind of the same in how we did report HTML. We're taking from 1 to 2. And if I go over here, we see that it's a lot easier, and it's the formatting is a lot better. So I'm going to do the same thing. So I have my get AD users. All I'm doing here every time is saving it into my table, and then in my computer I'm doing the same thing. And as you see, the formatting again is really nice. I'm declaring a section. In that section, I have another section. And then on there, I have my table. So instead of opening and closing different sections and areas, I just have to specify it. And in this section, I want my table. In this section, I want this table for computers table, and it gives us this. Now, one of the great things I said is the speed. I think I should be able to run that right here. And it's already done. So that took, seconds, 2 seconds instead of, 10, 15. So it's a lot better. In my third example here, now I'm going to deal with columns. So really, like I said, everything here is the same. Here's my get AD user, get AD computer. And if we take a look at the formatting, I'm going to go ahead and, well, this actually looks the same. Let me take a look at this one. Okay, that one I might have screwed up on this one. Oh no, you know what? So instead of right here, where I'm closing my main section here and opening a new section, in this third example, I have one big section and I have my 2 smaller sections, users and computers. And so now they're columns. I have my tables just as columns, and right there. So now we're changing it, right? Instead of 2 big sections here, so one on top of the other, I'm going to put them side by side via the section. And let's just jump over to 4. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a tab. So like I had in report HTML, that module, you put the tab at the top, and I'm going to list my first tab here, users. And if I just minimize this, I have another tab here called groups. And if we go over here, I have my users, my groups. And then just like the report HTML module, here I have my one big section. And then over here, I have my users and computers. So these should be side by side again via columns. And then over here, I just have one section that's going to have one table, and that's going to be my groups table. So if I go over here, I kind of have them side by side. And then in groups, I have it up and, I have one big table. And like I said, you can also filter all this, export it. So you see kind of the similarities in report HTML. The really big benefit is the formatting. Like Mike touched on, the formatting takes a lot of it's a lot of code. You got to open everything. You got to close it. You have to remember that. Otherwise, you get really weird formats. So this is a lot easier to get accustomed to. It's a lot easier to start off on, definitely. and the performance is a lot better. And let's jump over to 5. Yeah. So now 5, the only difference here, everything is the same except I changed this. And you'll see this, when you review this code on GitHub, instead of doing this section name, and I'm going to make it invisible, and I'll show you the differences. So invisible means I don't have my whole section up here. You'd see I don't have the blue border or anything. Now I'm going to go ahead and make it collapsible. So if I come over here, I have this option to hide it. And you can, if I go to my users, you can make these invisible, you can make these visible, and you can also hide them. So you can allow the options to hide, different data. So now I'm going to jump up here. I'm going to have one called user stats, and I'm going to put 3 columns here. So if I go ahead and look at 6, and if this was the report HTML module, you would see a lot of the code would be dedicated just to opening and closing. I think if people were to look at this one, you kind of understand a little more. You can, since they're open via brackets, you can close them, and you can kind of organize yourself that way. So, I'm starting from the top down. Here's my dashboard. I can open that and say, what's inside. Here's my tabs. And then I have each section available to me. So I have 2 sections up here, which we already know about, is the user and then user stats. So below, I'm going to go ahead and have my stats here. And if we review the code here, I should have it right here. So I'm actually going to, during my git-ed user, I have all my generic .lists up here. And I'm going to, so if it's locked out, so if the account is locked out, we're going to add it to my locked out table. If the password's set to never expire, we're going to, grab these properties and add it to this table. And then if the password is expired already, we're going to grab these different attributes and add it to this table. And then finally, for every user, we're just going to grab all the, different items we want. And we see that down here in my user stats section. I'm going to open a section here, and that's going to be named locked out users. And then I'm going to have a panel. So here I have 3 panels, 1, 2, 3. And then here's my 3 panels, within this section. So my locked out users, password never expires, and password expires. And then, I have my tab. My section here is just going to be the groups. And then the final example for this one is what happens if you have if I were to grab too much, I can't show it. If I grab too many attributes, so I'll show you that one really quick.
So I have a question. So all of these, the scripts are statically built, right?
Yeah.
So is there? I guess you could just think through the workflow of building this on the fly with new data as it comes along.
Mm-hmm.
It's right. Is it just a script that builds the dashboards? But I'm trying to abstract it out and thinking that, hey, it gives me the table list that needs to be there, and if it doesn't need to be there, I don't want that, table. I'm thinking. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, just brainstorming.
Yeah. Yeah. That. I mean, I think that you would have to do a lot of. I mean, to get if I'm understanding correctly, you'd have either a lot of if else, or you can, have different things trigger. If I say I got a new user or something, I'm definitely watching on GitHub to see where Evotech takes this, because right now I kind of see this module more as like the report HTML module. So it's a lot of static data. It's not live. It's not like the the PowerShell dashboard. But you're right. It is a lot of more static data. So we'll have to see where he goes with it. But that would be a nice thing to add. Continuing on here. So here I'm going to add a lot of different properties right here, a lot of different attributes. So what's going to happen here, and that's the only difference here, is now since I can't fit them all, in report HTML, it's going to try to fit them all within your table. and if it can't, it kind of has the weird formatting. It tries its best, but if you grab too much, so what this module will do is let you expand out. So I only see name, UPN enabled, and same account name, but I grabbed a lot more, so I can expand these different users, and I could see their email address. There's me, and I could see all the properties. And that's really the only difference. So we started off from, I think, this one where we just had one user, and then we went to 2 tables here, and then I showed you how to make them side by side if you'd like to. And then here we have the tabs, and it's same with report HTML, where you declare it at the top of your scripting. So I'll declare it down here in my tab right after you say this is your dashboard. And then here we're showing you different panels. So I have one giant object here with different panels. And then lastly, if you have so much data. So this module is very young. I'm definitely watching it to see it grow. I think it has a lot of benefits over Report HTML, but I wanted to show you kind of both, because the Report HTML post I had, a lot of people are always wanting to duplicate it and change it, and I wanted to show everyone both of them, just the pros and cons, and let you get used to building the report. But if we see over here, it's a lot easier to make your whole report here. It's a lot cleaner than the report HTML. You could kind of go, you can do both, but here for ease of, especially the first time using it, you can really break out your whole entire report. And then lastly, Teams notifications. So
can I stop there a second and just say?
Yeah.
So how are you using both of these? So I'm kind of reading between the lines. You're using both of them, and so how are you using them? And, like, what do you like about this one? What do you like about that one? Or
so the report HTML one was the first one, and it's really what the Dash-Emo module came from. So my favorite is, if say you were going to new clients, I really like to create a high-level report of their environment. So I have one in Office 365. I have one in Active Directory. So I was using all these reports, and I was using just report HTML because this Dash-Emo is brand new. But I was using these reports to kind of get an understanding of the environment, end users, management, because being a consulting firm, I love giving these to the end user, or if they said I want to see who's got what license in Office 365. Once I got a handle of report HTML, the module, and kind of how you open and close different objects, I created a list of users, and then the license that they had, and I could give that to the client, and I would put our branding on it. So it looks a lot better. It looks cleaner, more professional, and they really like it because they just double click it. They don't. It's not a weird file type, so they're able to interact with it. And so overall, it was really, I was using it more for making reports that looked really professional, and that you could give to anyone, and they're able to sit down with it and interact with it and just work with it. There's no learning curve or anything. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. So it's a hey, I want to give you a report of this environment. Not so much even like a dashboard, but here's a report of a state and time, and kind of like that point.
Right. Yep. That's how I would take it. Yeah, that's how I would take it. I take both of these as reports, static reports. Like I said, we'll have to see what happens with the Dash-Emo one if it gets kind of live updates. Because if it does get maybe a live update background, you could say, here's a table with locked out users, and as one comes in, you'll see it kind of the table change. You'll see when they're locked out. But right now, it doesn't have that functionality. But yes, I would just do environment reports, or reporting Office 365, Azure, so on and so forth.
Thanks.
Any other questions? So the last thing I'm going to touch up on is Teams notifications. I just started with Teams notification, or well, the Teams application. So the great thing about Teams is it's collaborative. I get tons of email. You know, everyone gets in every environment. You always have those email reports, and you get hundreds of emails saying, you know, this server's down, or you know, this needs to be looked at. I in a one of my clients I'm at, they get hundreds and thousands of emails, and they kind of wanted to fine tune it back. So they wanted to get it in different areas, because not everyone, you know, you get so many emails and you just kind of stop paying attention to them. So we looked into Teams because we're already on Office 365. One of the best things is collaborative. So one of my favorite notifications is locked out users. When we get a locked out user, I can just comment on it and I'll be like, you know what, I'm handling this really quick, or let me talk to this user. If you're in a state where you've gotten your, you know, your environment like that, where you can just kind of wait on these, it's great. It looks great to the user when we already know that they're already locked out, and we're already, you know, calling them to say, hey, you know, are you having any issues? It's customizable. You can change, you know, as we see here, we can change what's on each card. I can change whatever, you know, Teams channel it goes to. It's instant, and then it's formatted within a JSON format. So I'll go over here, and then I'm going to actually close all the documents. And so I just have, I believe, 3. So my first one, like I said, is locked out notifications. I'll kind of walk you through this. So first, I'll bring you over to Teams, and I do have a post on setting the locked out notifications and newly created users, I believe, on my blog. So over here, we'd want to set up a new webhook. So I'd want to do it in my help desk team. You just go over here to manage team, and then you'd create an incoming webhook. I'm not actually going to go through the whole entire creating the webhook. Actually, let's go ahead and create it. But I'll just stop right before. So you give your webhook a name. You give your webhook, you give this connector an image. So I kind of changed. You could give it whatever you'd like. One of mine, I gave it like a little virtual person. The other, on this example, I gave them different colors. So one would be red, would be, hey, we need to look at this right away. Yellow is, you know, this isn't super important. And green would be just a kind of a passive notification. And then you'd do create, and you'd get the, let's do test. And you're going to get your webhook URL. And you're just going to copy this, and you could say done. And if you ever, you know, create it and you're like, I lost it, just go over here to configured, and you see I have 6 configured, and you can get that URL back. But if we step back, so here is my webhook URL, which I'll delete it after this. And then my item image, I'm going to go ahead and, so since this is a locked out notification here, that's the image that it's actually referencing, is that little person with the orange hair. And then just similar, I'm going to make my new, you know, generic list or array. And so when you have a locked out user, we're looking for instance ID 4740. It's in a security log. And I'm just going to grab the first one. So why I do this is if I go over here and I look at my scheduled tasks and I say locked out user, my trigger is on event 4740. So if I use PowerShell and I say get event log, and I'm looking for this instance ID of 4740, I can, you know, I know that all I need to do is grab the first one, and that'll be the one that, you know, the user got locked out. And so here I'm going to have I'm getting my message, and I'm actually going to parse it down here, and I want the caller computer name. So the message is kind of is just like any other, you know, event ID message. And I want the caller computer name because that's the machine that they got locked out of. So if I show you over here, my lockout source, and I have my lockout source there. So that's the caller computer name. And all this is right here is I kind of wanted to make it a little more simple also. I'm not the best with regex, but here I'm starting to, you know, strip the actual caller computer name value. And then so down here, and that all this is getting my, you know, caller computer name. And then down here, I'm going to search AD account locally, and I'm going to get my users that are locked out. And then over here, I'm just selecting my first one. If I look over here, I'm sorting my object, and then I'm grabbing all these different attributes. And so now here is where we actually build the JSON message. And this takes a little bit to kind of understand. I know you can't keep adding a bunch of these sections. I'm still learning it. If you make it too big, it'll be cut off, but you'll see it there. So in my activity, so this is a whole message right here, section. So my title, I'm going to say, I'm going to take my recent locked out users and have their name. So I believe it's right here. So I have, Bradley Wyatt here, and she's locked out. And then the next one is going to be their email address. So if I look over here again, oh God. Oh my God. I have, the email address. And then down here, I kind of have a little bit of a bigger area, and I say, recent locked out user.name, account was locked out at, and then I'm going to just go ahead and say what time were they locked out. And then I just say may require additional assistance. And then my activity image, like I said, where was that, with the orange hair. And then down here under facts is kind of where you're building out your entire message. So it's all of these items. And you're just going to put, my lockout source, my timestamp. So I kind of like to build the message. I like to have a good overview on what's going on here in the card. And then down here, I just like to supply, new different attributes that I could kind of reference. And okay, so I know she had a bad password count 3 times. She is locked out. And then if you have, similar names, that that's the same account name. So here's my lockout source, lockout timestamp, locked out. And all you're doing here is, here's my machine name, my lockout source, which I declared up here. And then, recent locked out user. And I'm just going to say I'm just going to grab the attribute locked out. Here, I'm just going to grab the attribute bad password count and same account name. So you're just going to add this. Once you build out this actual, JSON, you're just going to add it to your array that we declared right up here. And then now we're actually going to create the body of our message. So now we're converting to JSON. The title of our entire card is going to be locked out user notification. And so we built this out here, all this stuff, and now we're kind of building out right here. So now I said locked out user notification. Here's the name, same item, and then my sections. So the sections are what we built out. And then I would just say, sending locked out account post, because we're posting that. We're going to use a post to, actually send the message. So once you've built out this entire script, all you're going to do, similar to what I did, and you can, the great thing about this Teams, these are just 3 examples, but you can make this for anything. You can do notifications within Azure or Office 365. But for mine, I just did right now on the Active Directory. So for my locked out user, 4740, and it's just gonna, if I look into here, there's my trigger. My action is just gonna run this PowerShell script, and that's it. So if I come over here, and I'm actually gonna see if I can bring Teams up in the same message and change my user, we should be able to see how quick this is. So I just need to do a bad password 3 times. It's going to run that script. So now I'm locked out. And then I should have and there's my message. So as we see, it's really quick. I have my notification, and all it's doing is running that script that we saved. And now, everyone knows that this user's locked out. And if you had different people, you could say, I'm on it. And you can work on it. You can assign it to people. But that's kind of what one of the great benefits is. And so my next item, let me look at.
Hey, Bradley.
Yeah.
So I think there's a few people that are curious about where you're running this from. So I'm guessing or making the assumption that some people are saying you're probably running it from the DC itself.
Yeah. Well, this one, yes, because I'm looking for this 4740 of the user being, locked out. So for this instance, yes, I'm running it from the domain controller.
Okay. So have you, I guess some people are probably wondering how they would do this in a multi-DC setup, which makes it a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, you can specify. Yeah, you could do same task on multiple DCs. You can specify the domain controller as well.
Well, I've done this before. So the issue is that you could just you'd find the PDC. So lockout events are a immediate replication, and so it would always go to the PDC, and so you'd only do that one. Now, but then if you wanted to find where it came from, those events aren't actually there, and so you'd be looking for a different event to actually who locked it and where it was locking from. And so that you'd have to go to the other DCs to get it. So I've done it in the past, and we've actually just forwarded all our lockout events all those events to one DC, and then just from there. And so, but it would work that way. But it's just one of those things at scale. And then the other thing is you're just selecting the first one. So I would question probably, even as you go, is probably have an index as far as which one, because in a very large environment, those would be firing, but you could potentially get 3 or 4 at that same time. And by the time your script runs, because it's got to load up, it's got to get all started, and then go get the event. And so it may actually, you may have gotten 3 or 4 lockouts of that event, but that's at scale.
Right. Yeah, that's something I didn't even consider.
So a lot of people saying forwarding the events. Obviously, yes, that's a way to do it, but the structure is basically the same, right? You grab some data and send the alert. So obviously your mileage may vary. A lot of different ways to skin the cat here.
Yeah. So if we go into my second one, you're right. So if I go to newly created users notification, you're right. This whole thing is the entire section is just the same. I'm building it out. If we look over here, and I won't waste too much time on this one. But here's my newly created user. I'm obviously using a different webhook here. And that one's actually, there we go. You're building, so you can use these for, a lot of different items. Right here, all I'm doing is looking for this security, 4720. So that would be a user was created. And, I'm just going to go ahead and get that new user, because in the event log, all that I did, so I'm going to take the first one again, and then I'm looking at the event, and I'm actually parsing this message, and the message is kind of built like a tree. So I'm going to go ahead and get the same account name, and I'm going to look up that same account name, get my user, and like Mike said, it's all, you're just, you're building out this, and once you kind of understand how to build out this just section, you can report on, get notifications on anything. So here's my new user name, and if we look over here on my new user, there she is, Allie Stevenson. And then I said a new user was created by administrator, so I said a new user was created by account that created, which I specify up here, and that's all within the event log, because the event log contains a lot of valuable information that you can kind of parse and crawl. So, and then I'm just having all my attributes under the facts. So created, UPN, same account name, and protected. And that's what we see here, created, UPN, same account name, and protected. And then my final example for Teams notifications. So this is saying, it's actually looking at event ID 4728. And, I just put these all on the server right here. So they're being triggered on different ones, 4728. So that's group change, or I think someone added to a group. New user. So for this one, I'm just saying I have an array here of groups to monitor. I just want to look at accounting and enterprise admins and domain admins. So again, here I have my event log, my event variable, and what I'm saying is get event log security. I'm going to grab the first one for instance ID 4728. And then these two items, all I'm doing is I'm kind of, crawling the message for the event. So here I'm going to say the group SID. I just want to grab the group SID, and then I want to grab the user that was added to this group. So I'm going to go and say, if groups to monitor contains, this group, I'm going to say get AD group, and I'm going to say, group SID. And so if this group is one of these groups, so that if that returns a true, so I know domain admins, enterprise admins are counting one of these groups had been changed, I'm going to go ahead and get the user that was added here, and then get the group that was just changed, so someone that was added to this group. And then, all you're doing is building out this JSON section. So I'm going to say, the account added user.name was added to the group, and I'm saying, group change.name. So I'm just calling these attributes for this group. And then if we look over here, I believe I have it up here, I'm saying my domain admin's changed. Here's a description of the group, designated administrators of the domain. And so if we see, there it is, group change.description. And then I'm saying the account Bradley Wyatt was added to the group domain admins. And then all it is building all these facts. So I'm just going to, these little facts section. So I'm just going to say, last modified, the new user that was added, the group type, and then the group scope. And here it is. It's all here, last modified, new user, group type, and group scope. And then all I'm doing is sending the notification. So, and I created this one, I think, this morning. So once you kind of understand on, one, what you're looking for, how you're going to trigger this, and then once you really figure out how you're going to, build your section, because I can, if I don't want, group type, I can get rid of this. And then in my actual Teams message, the group type won't have, this just won't be there. So you could piece it and customize it to fit your needs. You can really send anything as a webhook. You just have to be, conscious on making sure that it's not too big. I'm not familiar with the actual size limitation right now, but it will be cut off. So you'll see that it's cut off. So that's all my team.
With Teams though, is that, so that's just a standard structure. Those parts above that, all the right there, activity text, subtitle, title, image. That's all things you have to define when you're sending a webhook, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so if I get rid of this, and so that's all I have. Like I said, right now you could go into my GitHub and then go to this repository, RTP-SUG. I have all the scripts up there right now. I have all the examples, so you could kind of, grab them, play with them, kind of learn on the structure of them. I have the ones for -mo and, report HTML, and I numbered them the same way, so you'll see them there. It's got this structure. So if I wanted to go report HTML, you could see this was our first example, second example, and you could kind of see how our report is growing, and what different PowerShell code you need underneath it to achieve that. So you can grab that on my GitHub, and that's all I have. So thanks for tuning in, and let me know if anyone has any questions, help, or anything. I love working with people. I love working with people in the community. Anything challenging, and if you need help, I'm there.